Hey everyone, Brayden here coming to you with a Mickey Views special report. This is the big one, you guys. We are talking an entire Magic Kingdom land size rumor that I'm about to start breaking down here and going through all the details on, something we've been talking about with our sources for years now, getting details together. So go get a snack right now, send this video out to your friends because they're gonna be mad if you keep them in the dark on this. We have a lot to get into here. No filler today. Not that we usually do a whole lot of filler here on this channel, even normally, but especially not today. Today is very special because as you guys already saw in the title, I am here to tell you it is my sincere belief that right now Walt Disney Imagineering is in the process of developing a plan which should be announced in the not too distant future, retheming Frontierland in the Magic Kingdom at Walt Disney World, transforming the area into a New Orleans Square style area to complement the upcoming Tiana's Bayou Adventure attraction, which will be replacing Splash Mountain next year. And I know you guys are immediately wondering, Brayden, if Disney got rid of Frontierland, how does Big Thunder Mountain fit in? What do they do with that? What about the Country Bears? Does that fit in New Orleans? What about Tom Sawyer? Trust me, we are about to go through all of it here. And I think once I give you guys all the info I have, all the rumors I have, everything I know, I think it will paint for you guys a full picture, not just of Disney's intentions as far as Tiana is concerned, as far as the Frontierland area itself is concerned, but even beyond that. Remember that weird Beyond Big Thunder Mountain stuff that was teased at the D23 Expo last year? It's all about to make a lot more sense once you understand what I believe Disney's plan for Frontierland is. So first off, why should you believe anything I have to say? Well, for those of you who have watched for a while, you guys know I very rarely break rumors like this, throw random stuff out there, because I try to aim for a 100% hit rate where when I announce something to you guys, it actually ends up happening. That's how I like it to go. I told you guys about the Rose Gold Castle half a year before Disney announced it. I broke the news of Lightning Lane not too long ago, as many of our fans will recall. The reason I haven't broken a story since over this past year is simply because, you know, while I'm always hearing this and that, all sorts of hearsay, Disney's been such a mess lately, it just seemed very unlikely to me that anything that I was hearing was actually going to end up happening. So why even get you guys all hyped up or all upset over what ultimately ends up being nothing? Because that's what Chapek did creatively with the parks, just about nothing. But that is changing right now, and this is the first drop of the video. I am hearing very good things out of Walt Disney Imagineering right now, insofar as the likelihood of actual good projects, expansions, updates, things like that actually getting through here. Day by day, it seems like the chances of us actually getting something of substance finally greenlit for Walt Disney World, the chances keep going up and up and up. Under CEO Chapek, and while Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro was reporting to Chapek, nothing seemed to be able to get past even the parks chairman. Creative wasn't able to lead. According to creatives we know, it was really whatever the execs felt like on a day-to-day basis, and the execs themselves didn't seem to have much conviction in anything. Nobody wanted to commit any money to any of these ideas. They kept saying, go do a different idea, go do a different idea, tweak this, tweak that, and they were also forcing Imagineers out of the company all the while, which definitely wasn't good for morale. The only notable greenlit project at Walt Disney World during this period was Tiana's Bayou Adventure they committed to in 2020. Despite these troubled times, Imagineering continued developing interesting ideas, including a wider land transformation surrounding Tiana's Bayou Adventure, which we are about to get into. What's changing right now at Imagineering is creative is regaining control, much thanks to the return of CEO Bob Iger, who I've been quite critical of at certain points, because in terms of the day-to-day at Disney, there really doesn't seem to be much of a noticeable distinction between the two Bobs, yet they each get very, very different treatments. But one thing that isn't just about charisma or his public speaking ability, you know, Iger's been going on and on about letting creative lead, and that appears to not just be a talking point. That is real, according to our sources. Iger recently hired a former Imagineer to come back and co-lead Imagineering, a creative with a direct line of communication to Iger himself, Iger being the CEO, someone who can get money together for a project if he likes the idea, giving Parks Creative their first chance in a while of getting something over that wall of bureaucracy, indifference, and inaction that we were hearing was impenetrable for the past few years. And this week, the newest development I've heard is that now Parks Chairman Josh D'Amaro is on board with things returning to the pre-Chapek regime, where the Parks Creative had a say in not just coming up with projects, but also trying to get those funded and seeing those projects executed on. So because morale, which has frankly been abysmal at Imagineering for years, is starting to drastically improve, that gives me enough confidence to say, hey, maybe these land expansions, these land additions, and this land update we're going to talk about here, maybe it'll happen exactly the way that I think it will, or at least we'll get something close to it, some sort of component of what we're going to be talking about here, barring an imminent recession or some sort of other event that makes funding any further upgrades at the parks infeasible. I can tell you with near certainty what I'm about to tell you will be happening to some degree at the Magic Kingdom in the near future, so let's get into it. When Imagineering was considering a retheme of Splash Mountain at the Magic Kingdom, retheming it to Princess and the Frog, the update presented some thematic issues that I think a lot of us pointed out. First of all, a mountain in the Bayou. We're already stretching things a little far thematically here. And then on top of that, a lush bayou in a desert-themed land right next to Big Thunder Mountain. Well, you know, maybe we can make that work somehow, but then add in that Disney has a desire to add a New Orleans-style dining experience to the area alongside Tiana's Bayou Adventure. The ride is even food-themed. So where's all that supposed to go? Are we just going to slap it in the middle of the Frontierland street that you have? You know, just put it in Pecos Bills and the rest of the street stays the same? I think you guys can see how the idea arose. Hey, what if we simply rethemed Frontierland, the only substance of which, with the exception of Big Thunder Mountain right now, is that single walkway passing by the Rivers of America after Liberty Square? What if we updated the aesthetics of the buildings you have on that street and the offerings along that street and made it into a version of New Orleans Square like you have out at Disneyland, where then Tiana could have a restaurant where Pecos Bills is now? I think there we're definitely talking counter service, but I've also heard that they want to do a Tiana table service restaurant. But you guys know my questions when I started hearing about all this. It was, what are they going to do with Tom Sawyer's Island? What are they going to do with Big Thunder Mountain? What about Country Bears? What's happening with all of this? So at this point, I'm just going to show you the plan as I see it. Heading down the street, starting off at the front of Frontierland, the sign is a little understated. It's sort of off to the side. It's attached to that DVC kiosk. Everything in the immediate vicinity of the current Frontierland entrance is likely to remain as is. You have the Diamond Horseshoe, which is technically part of Liberty Square. I believe that'll be staying, as well as the Frontierland Shootin' Arcade. They'll probably rename it or something like that, but I do believe that'll be staying as well. Perhaps even the Frontierland gift shop you have over there will be staying in a similar or the exact same state as it currently is. And instead, this small New Orleans street will be starting with Country Bears, and those other Frontierland attractions will simply be roped into Liberty Square. So the Country Bears would be the first building in this New Orleans area. Now, here's what I've heard with Country Bears. Back in late 2019, I told you guys about a slew of projects that were under consideration for the 50th anniversary and that those projects had been green lit. It ended up that those never saw the light of day due to the events of 2020. They were put on the back burner, but the ideas, they were all well fleshed out. Imagineering had done a lot of development work for those projects. These included the addition of the Hatbox Ghost to the Haunted Mansion, which is now confirmed and will be happening later this year. Another planned upgrade that was supposed to be done in time for the 50th anniversary in the Magic Kingdom was completely redoing the Country Bear Jamboree, specifically completely rebuilding the animatronics themselves, getting rid of the current old hydraulic animatronics and putting in new next generation all electric animatronics, which would have much better reliability, far lower maintenance costs, and essentially ensure that the Country Bear Jamboree wouldn't go anywhere for the foreseeable future after Disney would make an infrastructure investment like that. And it wouldn't just be a tech upgrade, Disney would also bring back the Country Bear Jamboree Vacation Hoedown, a previous version of the Country Bear show that Disney Disney's done at the parks, where the bears sing songs about their vacation. They go on vacation and they sing songs about it. It was considered they could do some meta stuff like singing about going to Disney World while actually being in Walt Disney World, singing songs from the Haunted Mansion, things like that. It would be very engaging for the guests, needless to say. This is what I believe is still the current plan of what to do with the Country Bears if the Imagineers can get the money. And if you're wondering what they'll do with the beautiful, distinctly Frontierland facade on the outside, if this New Orleans Square retheme actually happened, obviously they need to retheme it to fit with that New Orleans Square theme. And what they likely do is do what they did with Muppet Vision a while back when they were putting in Star Wars. If you recall, what they did is they sort of toned down the Muppet theming on the exterior of the building, and they branded the outside of it as a theater, something that's a little bit more generic, but on the inside it's the same Muppet Vision show we know and love. It would be the same deal here in New Orleans Square with the Country Bear Jamboree, and also it would be an all-new show with the characters we know and love, except their next generation brand new animatronics. I think you can start to see why I've sort of held back talking about a lot of this, because it sounds quite extravagant, it sounds quite expensive, and what's the return on investment for these executives, right? We know how they've been lately, where they've been very, very tight on spending money, so we'll see about this, but to the best of my knowledge, this is the current plan for Country Bears if this Frontierland retheme ends up happening. Heading past Country Bears, we have more facade that would be easily redone. You just have to redo the facade into a more New Orleans style look, and then we arrive at Pecos Bill, one of the largest counter service establishments in the Magic Kingdom. Now, news on this one, very accidentally, has already started to get out, because bloggers have spotted Imagineers surveying the area very closely, and they wondered, what's this all about? Are they going to be doing some sort of Tiana restaurant here? Well, I think the chances are very good that that is the case, and that this is one major component to this overall retheme of Frontierland. Because what I believe Disney wants to do with Pecos Bill is put in a New Orleans-based counter service restaurant with a New Orleans Square type exterior facade, offering grab-and-go meals in the interior, as well as ample seating. Disney's doing precisely this out in Disneyland right now. They're updating the counter service in that New Orleans Square. Remember just the other day when Disney announced that inside of this new Tiana Bayou attraction, in the queue, there's going to be the smell of beignets. Perhaps this will be where you can actually go and grab some beignets after the attraction, or perhaps before, whichever you want to do. There's a big drop during the ride, so maybe after. It's also quite likely that this area could become a double counter service, where you have a large interior where you can go order full meals, and then you also have a window where you can specifically order the beignets and the mint juleps, just like how they do it out at New Orleans Square in Disneyland. Now, I love Frontierland. I think it's part of the DNA of the Magic Kingdom. It meant so much to Walt. I really think it was the land, or one of the lands, that was the most important to him. It really has that America vibe to it that really makes the park American in many ways. But mint juleps and beignets over there by this new attraction, if they updated Frontierland and put that stuff in there, maybe a live band as well while you're eating the beignets, you have to admit that would be pretty awesome, even if you're not a fan of Princess and the Frog. And if you think about the transition south from Pecos Bills, and it was all rethemed to the New Orleans Square style, I think that would still be a very smooth transition thematically to and from Adventureland. I think it would work quite well. Moving north of the Frontierland street that I believe Disney is considering retheming to New Orleans, now you have the more contentious stuff with getting rid of Frontierland at the Magic Kingdom. Because what do you do with Big Thunder Mountain and Tom Sawyer's Island? To my knowledge, and I've asked about this, and I've asked and asked and asked, because Tom Sawyer's Island, I've heard that it's staying, and I want Tom Sawyer's Island to stay, don't get me wrong. Talk about a property that means so much to Walt and has that very core Americana texture to it. But part of why I've been suspicious of this is, we're adults here. We know a big reason why Disney ever considered touching Splash, which was one of their most popular attractions in that park, why they're considering getting rid of Frontierland at all. A big motivating factor there is what Disney calls their Cultural Sensitivity Initiative. Disney had a committee go through the parks back in 2019 or so, I believe, and go through and flag attractions and things in attractions, components of attractions that they felt were insensitive. And Tom Sawyer is most certainly one that received the sort of ire that Splash and Frontierland as a whole received from that committee. Disney recently removed the names on the Tom Sawyer rafts because they thought that they were offensive. It's really felt to me like they've been gradually de-theming Tom Sawyer's Island because they think that in the future it's going to have a different theme, and they're basically done with the Tom Sawyer's theme already, so they're just sort of like slowly, gradually getting to that point where they can go retheme the whole thing. But as of right now, it does sound like Tom Sawyer's Island will be staying, and it is safe, so we will see how that goes there. And now we finally arrive at the real hair in the soup, with this idea of getting rid of Frontierland and making it into New Orleans Square. Get ready for your mind to be blown here as everything starts to connect and everything starts to make sense. All this weird stuff that we've heard out of Disney over the past year. Now, you have, in theory, no Frontierland. You have a New Orleans themed street. At the end of the street, you have the beacon that you're attracted towards, and that is this hill that you have at the end, and it's Tiana's attraction. But then you have Big Thunder Mountain, and what do you do with that? It doesn't blend into everything else. It is one of the iconic anchors of Frontierland, and if you retheme the rest of the land to New Orleans Square, and now it's all this New Orleans Bayou stuff, then what do you do with Big Thunder Mountain? Does it just sit back there? It's not in a land, or it just has its own land? Well, Imagineering has been thinking about this, I believe, for basically the last decade in terms of what to do beyond Big Thunder Mountain. Because behind the rivers of America, between the Haunted Mansion and Big Thunder Mountain, and off to the other side of Big Thunder even, there is a giant expansion area. In fact, there are multiple expansion pads in this area, and if they reshape the rivers of America a little bit, they can make the expansion pads even larger. The Magic Kingdom always needs more capacity, so there is a real operations as well as monetary pressure here on the executives to do something actionable back in this area that is prime for development and commit to something in the not so distant future. And that's, I think, why Josh D'Amaro, the park's chairman, felt the need to float some ideas for the area out to fans at the last D23 to gauge fan reactions. And he talked about Coco, Encanto, and villains for this area back here. So are you guys ready for this? What I believe we are looking at here is if Disney commits the money, which they may not, let's say that they do commit the money to all these ideas I'm talking about, we'd be looking at a retheme of Frontierland to New Orleans Square, leaving Big Thunder, the lone desert themed attraction, above the New Orleans area. So behind Big Thunder, Disney puts a Coco attraction as well as an Encanto area. And now you have a new land, a southwestern type of land, where Big Thunder meshes into the aesthetics and theme of the additions that are located directly behind it, being based on the geographies of Mexico and the mountains of Colombia. So Big Thunder would become part of a new generally desert type of themed land, but then, and this is the distant possibility, do not count on any of this, but especially not the Villains Land. Just recently, D'Amaro was still teasing the Villains Land though, so who knows? Think about this. So now you have a New Orleans area, a southwestern desert themed area above it. How do you transition Big Thunder and Coco into the Haunted Mansion? Because an infrastructure idea that Imagineering has had for a long time now is to add a new method of travel where guests can actually walk beyond the Haunted Mansion all the way over to the Big Thunder area. This would alleviate crowds and bottlenecks you have in the Liberty Square area, as well as add more square footage to the park, more capacity to the park. This would be a huge expansion for the Magic Kingdom. So let's say they finally pull the trigger on this plan that they've had for a long time. What do you do to transition the southwest desert-looking area into the Haunted Mansion of all things? Also think about it going the other way. Guests from Fantasyland, they then go to the Haunted Mansion, and then beyond the Haunted Mansion, what goes back there? I'm sure you guys already figured out what I was referencing minutes ago. A Villains Land. You put a Villains Land back there. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my thesis, my rumors, my prediction, if you will, based on the most recent available intel from our inside sources of what may be happening to the Magic Kingdom over, well, how long will this take? Probably the next decade. I do believe that this is the current roadmap for Disney, at least on this side of the park. I think they have other plans elsewhere as well. Imagineering has ideas on top of ideas on top of ideas. Disney has a real need to add capacity to that park, especially going into the second half of this decade and beyond. All we're waiting on is for CEO Iger, Chairman D'Amaro, Walt Disney World's president, Magic Kingdom's VP, all these folks to put their money where their mouth is and commit some money to actually making something happen here. Because if anything is going to get people excited to go to Disney over Universal's Epic Universe come the second half of this decade, it's going to have to be something big, it's going to have to be something major like this, and I do believe this is currently Imagineering's plan. One more major drop for you guys here. I have an update for you in regards to Tiana's Bayou adventure itself. Now, this is going to make a lot of you disappointed after we just talked about some relatively exciting stuff, some sort of cool ideas, especially the expansion stuff. Retheming Frontierland, I'm pretty conflicted on, I will say, but the stuff behind Big Thunder Mountain, that could be quite cool, and it does seem like something that could happen. We will see. You know how on the Disney Parks blog, Disney just announced that they're adding dozens of new animatronics to the attraction? I found that odd because last I heard from an Imagineer way back in 2020, and I told you guys this at the time, over half of the current animatronics on Splash Mountain, which features 68 animatronics, would be removed, and very few new ones would be added. Well, we got some pretty good intel yesterday from a viewer of these videos that in actuality, Disney may be in the process of removing every single animatronic, not half of the 68 from Splash Mountain, all of the Splash Mountain animatronics permanently, and the dozens that they will be adding, those new animatronics, many of which may be very limited in terms of their movements, those will be the only animatronics featured on the new Tiana attraction. This is because, just like what I told you guys with Country Bears, how Disney wants to eliminate maintaining the old, outdated, falling apart hydraulic animatronics and switch to modern electric motor animatronics, the same is true of Splash. Where to reduce future maintenance costs, Disney may be in the process of removing all of the current animatronics, some of which had very storied histories, where they traveled between multiple Disney shows and attractions over the decades. It looks like Disney is going to be dropping some new electric animatronics in here that are wireless communication and all sorts of fancy stuff like that, and calling it a day. And based on that dozens remark that Disney made in the blog post, if you want to look at the glass half empty, we could be looking at just 20-something animatronics on the new Tiana's Bayou adventure versus the almost 70 on the previous Splash Mountain attraction. So in that case, we'd be looking at around a 70% reduction in the number of animatronics on Splash once this retheme is completed, which would be quite sad there. I hope in this short amount of time I've been able to put together a good amount of weird, seemingly random things that you may have heard about over the past year, especially that Beyond Big Thunder Mountain stuff, and sort of weave together how that logically makes sense, what Imagineering is actually looking at behind the scenes here in a way that is not nearly as sort of random, and we're just considering ideas, like Josh D'Amaro made out to be in that D23 thing. They have a pretty serious plan here where it's really not just about what goes behind Big Thunder Mountain, it's also about what they do in front of Big Thunder Mountain, everything around that area, everything around the park. They're really looking at what is next for the Magic Kingdom as a whole as they look to expand the capacity in the park, add a lot more square footage, as well as add new intellectual properties and attractions and things of that nature. It's all part of a bigger plan, including getting rid of Frontierland perhaps, which is pretty crazy. So now the onus is on Disney to buck up and actually fund that plan, or simply just stop and, just don't mess with Frontierland and leave Walt's Land alone. Make up your mind, Disney, do one or the other. Don't keep us waiting. It's kind of nerve-wracking. It's like, oh, what are they going to do here? Safe to say there's a lot of analysis and opinion that can be leveled at everything I've just gone through here and given you guys. So maybe I'll fire up a stream soon and we could talk more about it. I'm sure lots of people watching this are letting me know what they think of these ideas in the comments below and all of that. Is it too daring? Is it an idea that has some good components that may also have some dubious motives? It's funny, I told someone this plan and their reaction was, oh wow, the Disney folk in LA, they really hate the rural people, don't they? That person, I guess they feel that, part of Disney's objection to Frontierland is they just don't simply identify with it, and therefore they don't care about it, or worse, they think that there's something wrong with having it in the park, which is definitely not something that Walt would appreciate. There's hours of discussion to be had about all this, because there's definitely some positives here, like I was saying, having a beignets area right by the Tiana's attraction, and that would be pretty nice. So I just wanted to lay all of that out on the table for you guys, all the rumors, all the little tidbits and things that I've been sitting on for basically a year at this point, in the hopes that maybe we're actually getting close to Disney announcing some part of this here. Maybe it's just a small retheme and they don't announce more of the Beyond Big Thunder Mountain stuff, but we can definitely hope and I'd love people to be able to say, hey, Brayden told us about that a while ago when Disney finally announces all of this. So we'll see how accurate this ends up being. Disney's so goofy right now. I think you can tell my hopes aren't super high that every aspect of this is going to come to fruition, but it doesn't sound like a super outlandish or crazy plan. I think you'd agree on that front. So it definitely is feasible. So at least I got that all off my chest. If you enjoyed this Mickey Views special report and want to see more exclusive news and content like this in the future, be sure to subscribe with those notifications on. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think about all of this. Some crazy, crazy stuff from the Mickey Views Magic Studio. This is Brayden. Have a magical day.